You could go on and on about who's going to be joining us today. 12:30, Terry McCormick will join us. He was at Titans OTAs today. At 1 o'clock to roughly 1:30-ish, we'll have Tim Hasselbeck, as always. Normally he's on a Tuesday, but today, since we had a little abbreviated show Tuesday and Wednesday because of Vanderbilt, he will join us today on Thursday. And then a little bit more, Mayor Freddie O'Connell would join us at 2 o'clock as he will help kind of discuss a little bit about the Super Bowl coming here in 2030 to Nashville. What a crazy sight that was. I was not there last night on Broadway, but from what I've heard and what I've seen online, it was a fun time from what it seems like. And then at 2:30, as always, we will be joined by ESPN's senior NHL writer, Greg Wyshynski. Greg obviously has been covering a lot of these NHL playoffs, so we'll get his thoughts on what he thinks about last night's game one against Vegas, or with Vegas and Colorado. But it's going to be a fun show today. Hopefully you guys will enjoy this wonderful show as I will be entertaining you for the time being. And the question of the day, I'll just get it out there right now. The big to-do at Titans OTAs, from what it seems like online, is seed oils. And you're probably thinking, what in the world are you talking about? Robert Saleh, I guess, was asked about, first order of business when it comes to, just stuff to be taken care of in-house. And the nutritional staff has removed seed oils from all the players' diets, which if you're probably thinking, what on God's green earth does seed oils have to do with anything with football? Well, let's just put it this way. Having seed oils in your diet, it has a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, along with, can possibly mess up some cellular damage. And then, obviously inflammation. You don't want inflammation for your players. You want them eating the best thing possible. And I love it. I love to hear that out of Robert Saleh, saying that, we got to eliminate seed oils. It'll be a fun thing to go about. But he's just I'm very impressed with the way he's carrying himself as a head coach, along with, previously being with the Jets. We'll get to some of his comments about that as well. But Cruz, what do you think about the whole seed oil situation?
It's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. I mean, every so often you get a new fad that comes up and people are trying new things out. I think time will tell whether it's a good idea or not, but I think the science backs it up. This probably isn't the best thing for a lot of athletes. I think people will figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And look, we all know Robert Saleh has that giant stature of just one of those guys that seems to be a gym freak for the most part. He's definitely, chiseled for all that up top, that is. And it just makes you wonder, does he know something that we don't know? Because, I mean, I get seed oils. It's probably, like you said, a fad. But if it's lowering the inflammation in players, maybe there is something to that. Again, he was a part of a San Francisco defense last season that was a rotating cast of players. Yeah, there was that whole issue with, Fred Warner and just the whole science behind the, building that was next to their practice facility that was kind of causing their injuries and so forth. That was a hoax. But it's just interesting to see him try to be one step above everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's always looking for their competitive edge. And if you find something that you think works, you're going to run with it because you want to see if it works or not. Now, again, I don't think that this is probably the most scientifically proven method of doing that. But again, competitors are going to compete and they're going to try to find any way that they could do it. And I guess if they think seed oil is the way to go, then they're going to go that way until it doesn't work. So, if it works out for them, great. But I don't see a scenario in which that works out for them.
Yeah, I was contemplating for the question of the day. I already had one planned out, but the seed oil thing seems to be taking social media by storm. So I'll still contemplate on it throughout the show. But as of right now, the official question of the day, since we are approaching the summer vacation months, where is the best hidden vacation spot anywhere in the world that you like to go to or you've been to? If, either or. I'm real intrigued about this. Obviously, vacation time is fun. You get to unwind. You get to relax. Maybe just prop up a radio next to your chair and listen to 102.5 The Game, whatever it may be. But text us on the Wilson County Hyundai phone and text line, 615-737-1025. Again, what is the best hidden gem vacation spot for you? And we'll get to all those throughout the show. Again, coming up, I'd say roughly at 12:30, we'll have Terry McCormick. 1 o'clock, we'll have Tim Hasselbeck. And to follow with that at 2 o'clock, Mayor Freddie O'Connell. And 2:30, Greg Wyshynski. So kind of getting a little bit more of last night. Cruz, my bad on that. I'm intrigued to hear what Greg will have to say at 2:30 about these NHL playoffs because, again, Vegas is showing up to the table and saying, look, Colorado may be the favorites, but we're going to come down and humble you to some degree.
Yeah, well, when the postseason comes around, anything's possible. Clearly, you could be the best team all season long, but you've got to be able to back it up when the postseason comes around. And this is going to be a series that it's going to be really exciting to watch it play out. It almost similar to what we're seeing in the Western Conference Finals in the NBA, where these are two heavyweights clashing, and there's going to be a lot of appeal in this series, a lot of great storylines, and the ball, or I guess in this case, the puck's not going to bounce one way or the other. One team's going to have to be able to take it. And so far, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Last night, that first period, it was definitely a stalemate, 0-0. Teams kind of filling each other out for the most part. And then in the second period, Vegas just opened it up and said, hey, we're going to keep on scoring. And they put up 2. And I feel like it took Colorado like a step back for a second to realize, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then it just seemed to the point where they just couldn't catch up in the third period because, I mean, obviously they scored 2 goals, but nothing to the degree because you had the empty netter and it kind of, evened itself out. But I like what I've seen out of Vegas so far. They said, you know what, we're going to come at you. We're going to hit you in the mouth. And guess what? You're going to have to fight back. And it just goes to show you that Colorado is not the team that everybody thinks they are right now. And, I mean, they're still the top-tier team, but we'll see about the other side of the bracket when it comes to Carolina tonight because that's a team that's 8-0. It's going to be probably the most rested team right now in the playoffs, and we'll see what that takes place after that long-winded 7-game series between Buffalo and Montreal. So we'll get into all that here in a little bit on the other side of that. But overall, Cruz, how are you, man? I didn't even get to say hi. How you doing?
Not too bad. It's my second time working the big board here in the main studio. I did Robbie and Rexford a couple weeks ago, and like I said, I got Parker Kelly, a great friend in here, helping me out, and we're going to make it happen. We know Chase is still not feeling too great. We hope he gets well soon. Big Joe's out doing his own thing in the community, and we wish him the best of luck there, and happy that I get to be a part of this with you.
Indeed. Yeah, at 1:30, I'll get your thoughts on this, and we'll get all of our listeners' thoughts on this as well. The whole college football conversation, and with the NIL and how there's money that's kind of frozen right now because of how it's being distributed, along with could there be a breakaway league? Could the SEC and the Big Ten have some form of a breakaway league that's going to just ruffle the feathers of all college sports fans and the structure of college athletics as a whole? Because that's something that has just been getting into, the politics of the world, along with just players that are still waiting for money. And you also have the transfer portal. It's just a lot of chaos right now. And it's been chaos for the last 2 to 3 years. You just wonder, what is it going to look like in the future? Are we going to see a more NFL style of a breakaway league? And I'm leaning in that direction. As much as I don't want that to happen, that's what we're probably going to see.
Yeah, I think anything's on the table at this point, honestly, Nick. I mean, the landscape of college football and really college athletics as a whole has changed so drastically, especially since the COVID pandemic, bringing on NIL and now, the way that things are changing with conference realignment. I wouldn't say it's out of the question, especially with as big of players as the Big Ten and the SEC are. I don't think that's such a far-fetched idea. Now, obviously, it's going to take a long time for those possibilities to come to fruition. But certainly, I don't think that it's out of the question that could potentially be something that happens down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because, like, the Big Ten has always kind of been the little brother to the SEC in, I'd say, the financial aspects of things in years past. But that's kind of the tide has changed a little bit on that. I mean, the Big Ten has the best team in college baseball right now. They've won national championships in football, I believe back-to-back, that is. That they're
back-to-back.
Yeah, 3 times. Thank you there.
Don't forget it.
Yeah, you're right. You being an Indiana grad, a guy from the basketball country. I mean, it's crazy to say that the Big Ten is now the big brother to the SEC on the field and on the court right now. But when it comes to the finances of it all, maybe currently the Big Ten's still a little bit up, but Tony Petitti's probably thinking, I'm going to kick my feet up, sit in the lazy boy, and just wait for this to unfold because I'm going to ride this out as long as possible. Where you have the SEC that's probably thinking, all right, we got to figure out a way where we can get the right number because, the whole playoff expansion, is it going to be 16? Is it going to be 24? Is it going to stay at 12? Well, obviously, if the SEC doesn't agree on anything, it's going to stay at 12. I mean, that's the thing. So I don't know. I would like to see a little bit of an expansion for the playoff, but at the same time, like I've said before in previous weeks on this show, you just can't expand anything yet until the rules and everything around it is fixed. So I'm more about getting the stuff off the field situated before you can change the on the field product. And again, money is driving all this. But again, we'll get into that roughly around 1:30 to near the end of the hour there. I just think it's such an interesting topic for people to discuss. Obviously, if you were at the Super Bowl party-ish on Broadway last night, let us know how it was. We'd love to hear from you, 615-737-1025. But yeah, no, I just kind of want to get a little more of that. It kind of leads into our other question of the day that I had. I was kind of contemplating it, but yeah, it's interesting because the Titans are one of those teams that could be on the up and up when it comes to 2030. Could they be a potential Super Bowl team? And it's just crazy to think as a Nashvilleian that the Super Bowl is going to come here to the Music City. So we'll get into all that coming up on the rest of this show right here on Chase McJoe 102.5 The Game. Today, the Nashville Sounds take on the Durham Bulls. First pitch is at 5:45. Catch all the action on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Social Cantina. The Durham Bulls are the AAA affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. Big baseball guy here. Back here on 102.5 The Game, Chase and Big Joe Show. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier leading the pack today. I hear we have a few callers. So, Edward, what you got for me, man?
Hey, guys, two things. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
First, on my bucket list is to go to a Super Bowl. What do you think the best way to possibly score some tickets this far out? Because I've always been told for Super Bowl if you can get tickets a year or two out. And if any of the other callers that are going to be calling in, shed some light on that, because I would like to go. Second thing, NBA playoffs. I've been keeping up with it. New York Knicks were down 22 points the other night, and 7 minutes left, they came back. I lay this loss on the Cavaliers solely on James Harden. Zero defense. Brunson beat him through the rim every time. And he was pulling behind the puck. He didn't even want to try to play defense. That's so aggravating. But, great score. Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, give him a 9.5. The defense, a 1 or 2. He is the sole reason for losing that game. On the Cleveland, only San Antonio Spurs. And by the way, Cleveland, for me, is the shocker of the season. But the Spurs, Oklahoma might be in a little bit of trouble. That was a fight last night to win that game. And Victor, if he can stay healthy and not break any of those bones and he's fragile at times, he might have trouble. But anyway, just if you can comment on Super Bowl, on tickets and then the NBA playoffs for 4 remaining teams. Thank you.
Appreciate the call, Edward. Help me out with that cruise on that last part there about the NBA playoffs. You said it was on James Harden's. It was on him?
Well, I don't think it's entirely on him, but I think he has something to do with it. Now, there's been a track history of James Harden, especially over the course of the last, 6 to 8 years in the playoffs, of him not showing up. And
Sure.
That's what happened, especially in game 1 against New York the other day down the stretch. I mean, there were some questionable shots. His defense was very suspect. He's going to have to be big time for Cleveland if they want to have an opportunity to take down a really good New York team. He's going to have to be a big part of it. So I don't think Edwards completely wrong on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, going back and looking at the previous series with Detroit, there were times where James Harden was taking some selective shots that probably he should not have gone with. And again, he has that follow through to where your legs are kind of almost sweeping underneath you. And he's always looking for that arm grab foul. And I think it's just hilarious because that there was an opportunity like 4 or 5 times in I think like game 6 where James Harden had the opportunity to pass it off to, Donovan Mitchell or somebody else, even Evan Mobley, down low. So, yeah, I could see where Edwards coming at. But, the Knicks, to be fair, the Knicks are a pretty darn good basketball team. You're down, 22 points in the fourth quarter, and it's, 22-4 run. I think it was the largest comeback in
Knicks franchise history, and
yeah.
It was the second largest comeback in the playoffs, I think, since 2000. It was quite the comeback. But going back to James Harden in the bigger picture, I remember whenever I heard that James Harden was traded from the LA Clippers to the Cleveland Cavaliers, I was very suspicious about why Cleveland made that trade. Cleveland has been a good team for the last 2 or 3 years with that core: Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and then what used to be Darius Garland, and now has turned into James Harden. James Harden's a ball-dominant guard. Same thing can be said for Donovan Mitchell. You have 2 ball-dominant guards in your backcourt. Things are not going to go well. So I was very curious as to why Cleveland made that trade, and you're kind of seeing the fruits of that come to fruition here in this playoff series in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, there's obviously still a lot of games to be played in this series. They could still go the distance, but from what I'm seeing right now, I'd be surprised if Cleveland finds a way to win this series with the way their roster is constructed.
Yeah, and they're 2 bigs down low, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who have been, I'd say, an integral part to their offensive and defensive production. I feel like they need to be used a little bit more. Going back to game 1 in the Eastern Conference Finals, I feel like they weren't utilized enough. down low. Again, I know NBA has kind of transitioned to that, 3-point shot. You get a shot here and there on the elbow, but I would like to see a little bit more driving to the paint. And I think that's why you look at New York and you see Jalen Brunson. He's one of those people that just drives to the paint and collects the foul. Now, you could say, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is one of those players that call him the free throw merchant or the foul merchant or whatever, where he's going down into the paint and trying to get to the free throw line. But there's two ways to look at it. One guy that dribbles and drives, that scores and converts on those and-ones, or a guy that kind of goes up for it and just goes to the free throw line. So, yeah, it's hit or miss in some cases.
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. When it comes to bigs in the NBA today, yeah, obviously you tend to look for those stretch forwards, those guys who can not only finish around the rim but also extend it beyond the arc. Think Kristaps Porzingis was a pioneer when it came to that. Or nowadays, the extreme version of that is Victor Wembanyama. But there's a lot of opportunities to be had around the rim. The most efficient shots in basketball, this is the way it's been trending ever since the three-point revolution came in the middle of the last decade, is getting shots around the rim and getting shots beyond the arc, especially in the catch-and-shoot variety. You hardly see many players go to the mid-range. Players like DeMar DeRozan, you don't see too much anymore because players are so used to shooting around the rim and just beyond the three-point line, because those are the most efficient shots, statistically speaking, in basketball. But again, you look at around the three-point line, that's great, but around the rim, that's big. And when you have guys who have big bodies, you need to take advantage of them, especially against a team that's relatively undersized in Detroit. Cleveland was able to take advantage of that. Against New York and a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns, it might be a little bit more difficult to do, but Cleveland still has the numbers as well. They've got two bigs who are capable of being all-stars and have been all-stars. So you've got to take advantage of it.
Exactly. Talking about bigs, I believe we still have a big caller on the line, Dr. Locke. If he's still on the line, what you got for us, Dr. Locke?
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing today?
Great.
Well, I was just calling to touch on which one of y'all were talking about the breakaway league.
That would be me.
Oh, well, it's already in play. We already have a breakaway league. It's the Ohio State. It's the Big Ten Conference. We've already broken away back to back championships. It's already a done deal.
Well, I mean, that's great. That's a good way to look at it if you're a Big Ten fan like you. I mean, overall, though, looking at that situation, it's going to happen, I'd say, within the next, 3 to 5 years. It just, you feel it. If there's not an agreement within, I'd say, after this year, obviously they're probably going to stay at 12 teams. But after that, it's chaos. It's even more chaos than it is now.
I hear you. The NCAA, I don't see it happening. So I'm on the flip side of that. It'll settle down eventually. I don't see any way an alternate league can work. But yeah, I'd have a little fun with you guys as far as the Big Ten is concerned. We already broke away.
Okay. Well, tune in at 1:30 for the rest of the conversation. We appreciate the call, Dr. Locke.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's a Big Ten guy, especially Ohio State. I get his point of view, but I do see, if you look at Notre Dame and add them to the question, it's interesting because they have the TV deal with NBC, and you wonder, how does that play into factor of a breakaway league? Because that would not technically be a conference for them. How would you schedule them and all that? I don't know. It's a tough one, but we'll get to it here at 1:30 after Tim Hasselbeck. Coming up next, we have the one and only Terry McCormick with Main Street Media, along with TitansInsiders.com. We'll get Terry's take on today's OTAs right here on the Jason McJoe Show, 102.5 The Game. Mm-hmm. Back here on the Chasing Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game out here at Cracker Barrel, 3454 Percy Priest Drive, excuse me. This is going to be a fun rest of the shows. Goodness gracious. Checking in with Terry McCormick, TitansInsiders.com. Terry, how are you, sir? No Terry yet. Okay, that's fine. No worries. Kind of getting into a little bit of Titans talk before we get Terry, if he is there. Cruz, kind of getting into some stuff here. Titans hiring another guy into the front office, and it's not Chad Brinker or anybody else. It's actually taking up that role. It's sort of like a lesser role in a roundabout way. Dave Gardy, he is now in the front office with the Titans. He replaces Chad Brinker in that, like I said, that lesser role. And again, he will be talking directly to the horse's mouth. That's general manager Mike Borgonzi. I think this is a good hire for the Titans because it seems like they have direction. This guy definitely has experience, and not only the experience, but it seems like it's I'll use a Godfather reference. You know, Tom Hagen was the consigliere to the Don. Once the Don's out of the way, then it's Michael Corleone. I would say in this case, Mike Borgonzi's Michael Corleone, and then Tom Hagen's his right-hand man. That's kind of how I feel right now.
That's a really creative comparison right there. How long have you had that one in the holster for?
Not for a while, because Joe and I were talking about best movies on Monday or Tuesday this past week. And he kept saying the Ernest movies were better than the Godfather trilogy. I'm thinking, Joe, I can't agree with you on that, man. It's Godfather all the way. So that's kind of where I got with all that. But overall, like I said, I think the Titans are showing promise and showing direction that this is a good hire for them.
Yeah, no question about it. And you know, the overall trajectory of the franchise has been positive. Everybody who I've talked to, they've seemed pretty favorable about the direction that it's heading. And you know, you combine that with the fact that Nashville is going to host a Super Bowl. I mean, you mentioned that, you know, who knows what the Titans will be able to do. What is it, 2030 when the Super Bowl comes to the
Right.
Music City? So
29-30 season.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm not going to say that the Titans are going to be Super Bowl contenders at that point, but you know, they keep making hires like this. You know, that certainly isn't out of the question. I mean, you know, you keep making good hires, you keep stacking good hires, you keep bringing in good draft picks. Like my man Pat Coogan, Parker Kelly knows a lot about Pat Coogan, and maybe Dr. Locke knows about him as well. But you keep bringing in great draft picks and also bringing in good personnel in the front office. I mean, the trajectory is on its way up, and hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, I mean, Gardy, he was with the Washington Commanders the last 2 seasons as a senior vice president of football initiatives, which is interesting. Oh, okay, perfect. It's interesting, and we'll get a little bit more on Dave here with the one and only Terry McCormick, TitansInsiders.com. Terry, how are you today, sir?
All right.
Hey, Terry, how are you, man?
I'm good.
So, Terry, we were just talking. Yeah, I got you loud and clear. Before we
I can't talk about like what's going on out here because they're still practicing it all.
Yes, sir.
We can talk in generality.
You got it, man. Yeah, Titans hiring Dave Gardy this morning or yesterday. Your thoughts on the hire right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting move because, you know, Gardy brings in a lot of experience, and he's going to, I guess, handle some of what Chad Brinker handled before Chad departed the organization. So it's interesting, you know, that they now have the same amount of people, you know, in those roles, and decided to go ahead and fill it, even though Gardy will answer to Borgonzi.
Yeah, I think it's a good combination because now you actually have a true structure of who's talking to who, where is what type thing. And also they're both, Brown University graduates. I think that's just a coincidence in this case. But you talk about his experience with Washington. Also the fact that he has, you know, a doctor of law degree from Hofstra University. How does that come into play with all this?
Well, I mean, I think the more experience you can have and you know, things like that, the more you can do, the more you know. I think that's probably going to help him if he comes in here and gets acclimated to the role that they've got for him. You know, he's going to have his hand in analytics. He's going to have his hand in, you know, some other things, you know, as far as on the football side and then on the non-football side. So I think, you know, he's going to have his fingers in a lot of pies, so to speak.
There you go. Exactly. And Terry, another thing about Titans, I think it was before the OTA practice today, Robert Saleh addressed the media. mentioned a few things. One was about seed oil. Another one was just about Cam Ward's arm. It's perfectly healthy, was what some of the quotes were saying on Twitter. Just, I mean, obviously you can't speak on what's going on in the field, but health-wise, how does it seem to be out there on the field?
Well, I mean, there's some guys who are not able to be here today. This is voluntary and things like that. But, Robert Saleh pronounced Cam healthy and, said his arm is good. So, until I see otherwise, I guess, I'll take him at his word that Cam Ward is ready to go and, going to try to build off what he did last year and also try to, learn a new offense. And, because this, as Saleh said, this is really install time, and that's kind of what's the most important thing right now.
Yeah, installs for sure, being one of the more younger teams across the league right now. Okay, getting to the big topic of conversation, and that's the seed oils comment. Robert Saleh and the nutritional staff have eliminated seed oils from the diets of all the players. Am I hearing that right, Terry?
Yeah, apparently that's what's going on. No more seed oil. So, I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what that would mean, but obviously it's something that he felt like needed to be addressed and taken care of.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, too, if there was something with San Francisco last season because of all the injuries. He's probably trying to get an upper hand at, maybe a dietary, situation that is. And obviously looked it up before the show, and, it reduces inflammation. So you probably want to make sure your players are not as inflamed as they should be for injuries.
Yeah, and, inflammation, that can carry on with you even into your old age. So I guess if you can eliminate that and not have that worry, that's certainly a benefit. So that seems to be why he would have done that.
Yeah, and there was another thing that was mentioned in the press conference about the preseason, and it says, as of now, subject to change, Robert Saleh was saying, we're going to play our people in all 3 games. Obviously, that's a very big umbrella take for some cases, but what do you think about the preseason approach for Robert Saleh?
Well, I think playing all the guys in all the games, I think that that's giving everybody an opportunity because you've got a brand new coaching staff coming in, and they got to get to know these guys. They got to see who can perform when the lights are on, who can perform, when the pads go on and everything like that. So, it's only fair to give everybody, as much of a shot as you can before you make the decision as to who's going to be on the 53.
Yeah, I do like the approach because, at the beginning of, the mini rookie camp, there was the comment of, I'm not getting the rookies on the field because I don't want to get them hurt and get them in the weight room and just stuff like that. I like the approach from Robert Saleh. He's taking it just a slow step, one step at a time, and not trying to rush everything. And I think that's just genius for such a young team right now that's trying to get their feet under them.
Yeah, I think that's, he's approaching things the right way with a new team and a lot of new faces. I think, that's kind of what you have to do, when you're trying to mold everything and get this thing to gel together and kind of see who can do what.
And then another thing before we let you go, Terry, the Super Bowl 2030 going to be in Nashville. I'm not sure if you were at the press conference yesterday, but your overall thoughts on the Super Bowl coming here to the Music City.
Well, I think it's certainly a great opportunity for the city of Nashville to be able to host the Super Bowl in 2030. And I think it really, if you kind of read between the lines and you talk to some of the people that, were there yesterday and, in their interviews and whatnot, some cities get a one-off because they build a new stadium, and some cities seem to attract the league's attention and get in, for better or worse, a Super Bowl rotation. So in terms of the Super Bowl rotation, I think that, I think if they do well with this one in 2030, then, I think they'll get an opportunity to, host one again down the road.
Do you think the Super Bowl in 2030, Terry, is putting a little bit more pressure to the current staff and roster of this team?
Not necessarily. I mean, any coaching staff is going to be the pressure to win, and I think, very few teams play in the Super Bowl in their home stadium. It's happened maybe once or twice. But I think it would be good if this team was, back in contention, before that and by that point, because I think, certainly, you want to, open the new stadium in the right way next year and have this team playing, good competitive football so that, you give the fans their money's worth.
Indeed. That's Terry McCormick with TitansInsiders.com. Terry, appreciate the time, man. We'll catch up with you down the road.
All right, thanks.
Terry McCormick out there at Titans OTAs. It's just, it's hard to kind of talk about things. You can probably talk about it after the practice and so forth, but it's going to be an interesting season for the Tennessee Titans. It seems to be a promising season as well. But you can raise your glass with Tennessee Brew Works, proud partner of the official craft beer of the football offseason coverage on 102.5 The Game. We'll get into some of the stuff Terry had to say on the other side right here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Back here on the Chase and McJoe Show, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier, out here at Cracker Barrel, 3454 Percy Priest Drive. Wonderful day outside, beautiful, not humid. It's just a beautiful day to be alive, man. Beautiful day to be alive. Hey, the 615 Open Golf Tournament might be sold out, but you can bid on all kinds of awesome experiences to directly support Folds of Honor at 615open.com/auction. Have an unforgettable time while supporting a great cause at 615open.com/auction. Like I said, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier here alongside Cruz Martin back at our Busy Bee Studios, reacting to stuff that some of the things Terry McCormick had to say. And one thing kind of struck a chord with me was just, talking about the preseason, how Robert Saleh said he's going to have everybody out there. It just goes to show you that he's going to take this full force ahead. Once OTAs are over with, once all the other offseason training work is done with, you're grabbing your best 90 guys in the preseason and going full force at it. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for some of these young players to really make a name for themselves.
Yeah, I really like seeing the organization really take charge right here. You're not, resting anybody early on. You want to make sure that everybody's all hands on deck getting you ready for the season, especially after the last couple of years that the Titans have had. It's good to see the organization really wanting to take charge of this upcoming season, really show that, they're all in from the get-go, and maybe it'll pay dividends here the next couple of years, especially hopefully this year for Titan Nation.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these rookies that, I wouldn't say are uncertain, but like you look at Nick Singleton, who's a 5th-round pick, coming off that Jones fracture in his foot, see what he can do in the preseason. You look at Pat Coogan, who is that center they drafted out of Indiana with your alma mater. Again, I think Pat Coogan's one of those players that it's going to take a little time. I wouldn't like to see him get first-team reps in the first year unless there is a need for it. And then you have a few other players like Fernando Carmona, the guard out of Arkansas. He's even, talked about his, I would say his stopping incident that happened a couple years back, and he's a different player now. So again, I think they're getting a lot of guys on this team that they're gritty, that want to win, and they're just hungry for a starting spot somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see how the preseason unfolds, watching those few players right there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you mentioned it. They're bringing in players who are hungry and want to win. The most successful organizations, across sports in general, not even just in the NFL, a lot of those teams draft players who came from winning cultures. I'll use Pat Coogan as an example because I'm more familiar with them. He was at 2 winning programs. He was a part of a Notre Dame team that went to the College Football Playoff National Championship in the 2024 season. 25, I guess technically is when the game was, that lost to Ohio State. Yeah. Transferred to Indiana for a year, won a national championship under Kurt Signetti. So, Pat Coogan's just one example of the kind of people that the Titans are bringing in, guys who are proven winners. They know what a winning culture looks like, and the Titans organization hoping that they bring that winning culture to Nashville, and hopefully it'll pay dividends.
Yeah, for sure. And you talk about the winning culture. I mean, obviously, Gardy, the guy Dave Gardy, that they brought in for that lesser role in a roundabout way for the Titans in that, I guess, football operations, job option there. It doesn't come from really a winning organization per se, but definitely has the experience to be a part of a winning organization, and that's with the Titans. So you wonder how that all plays out along with this roster. I think this team is slowly trying to build something for that 2030 Super Bowl, and I even asked Terry about it. He goes, well, I would say puts pressure on the current roster right now, but I think it kind of does a little bit. What do you say, Cruz?
Yes and no. I think both things could be true at the same time because, at one time, yes, it'd be great for the Titans to be able to play a Super Bowl, especially at home. But at the end of the day, every single organization's goal is to try to win a Super Bowl each and every year. So it's not so much as though that goal has changed. It's just it's going to be a little bit more prominent knowing that they could potentially play essentially a home Super Bowl game. So I would say yes, it kind of brings that more to the forefront in terms of the attention of not just the organization, but also the fan base. But at the end of the day, an organization's goal should be to win a Super Bowl. So, I think both can be true, relatively speaking, at the same time.
Absolutely. And kind of just touching all bases here before we wrap up the hour. Getting back to our question of the day real quick. Where is the best hidden vacation spot that you've ever been to? And we've had some text on the text line right now. And it is, let's see, 2194 says TPC Sawgrass in Jacksonville. Great golf, private beach, nice and quiet, great for families. I've yet to go. Maybe some point in my life I'll get to TPC Sawgrass. My brother and dad are a big golf fans, so it is probably one of the best. That's where they host the Players, I believe, Players Championship. So that is definitely on the bucket list opportunities for vacation spots. I don't know if you're a big golfer, Cruz, but it seems to be one of those places that you just destined to go to at some point.
I used to be a big golfer back in high school. I played on the varsity team, but I was the number 5 guy, which meant that unless somebody else played absolutely terribly, my score didn't count. But
So you're the alternate.
Yeah, I was the alternate. I had a good round every now and then, but yeah, TPC Sawgrass is a good choice. Now during hurricane season, maybe that's a different decision, but springtime, not too bad.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. 2645 is weighed in and says New Smyrna Beach, Florida, Great Atlantic Coast Beach, not as touristy and crowded. Headed there tomorrow. Okay, 2645. Have a good time, man. I'd like to go to the beach. Obviously, it's not sweltering hot out here, and when you go to the beach, you kind of get a little sweaty. But yeah, get some nice salty air. That'd be good. Get some fresh fish to eat. Big mahi guy. I could do some of that right now. But I'm a Cracker Barrel. I could give me a nice little mama's pancake breakfast.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm a sucker for breakfast, man. You can't change my mind about it. A little overcast, but that's all right. Maybe get some syrup here in a little bit. Is it syrup?
Syrup. I don't know.
Syrup?
I don't know. Then you're going to have me thinking about this the rest of the day. I've never really thought about how I say that word until you just brought that up. So thanks for making me self-conscious. But
trust me, I stay self-conscious. How about that? Yeah. No, Chase and Joe, I think we were it was like one of our questions of the day, like how do you pronounce certain words? And it was like caramel, tomato, not really tomato.
I'll say for the caramel thing, I'll die on the hill of caramel.
Yeah, caramel.
Okay, so me and you see eye to eye on that then.
Yeah,
who was saying caramel? Was somebody saying that?
Yeah, people like caramel pie. I'm like, it's caramel pie, right?
Right.
It's got to be caramel.
Any rational person would think that, right?
Exactly. I don't know. Weigh in on the text line if you think it's different. I mean, it's all over the place today. But yeah, I would like to go to TPC Sawgrass. That'd be a cool place to go for vacation. And then obviously the other texture here says New Smyrna Beach, Florida. So I've yet to go there or have I heard of that. So that's a new place to go look at on the good old interwebs of the world. But we'll get into some more football conversations with the one and only Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. We'll get to him in hour number 2 right here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Hour number 2 of the Chase and Big Joe show. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier out here at Cracker Barrel, 3454 Percy Priest Drive. Now joined by ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, how are you today, man?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Doing all right. Hey, Chase and Joe said, hey, here are the keys. You take it and make sure you don't crash the car.
Well, listen, I trust you to drive more than Chase, I think. Is that fair?
That's fair. I appreciate that, Tim. Give me a 4-door sedan. We'll be all right. That's fine with that. But getting into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, OTAs are underway for many of teams, one of them being the Tennessee Titans. The Titans held a press conference before the OTA practice today. I think the big to-do right now is Robert Saleh mentioned the nutritional staff has removed seed oil from all the players' diets. Do you have any extra intel into that, or is that just kind of like a fad?
Hey, I've got no intel on seed oil. I think, it's funny, just look at the things that we talk about in terms of player health and safety and things like that. It's the 49ers and the substation that's right next to their practice facility. Now we're talking about seed oil, yet, guys are going to be flying to Australia to play games and then turn around and play, a game on a Thursday night or whatever it is. So it's like player health and safety in some regard. And then other areas, it's like, yep, we're just going to keep adding games and fly internationally. So it's, I don't know, kind of feels like a bit of a tug of war to me.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Another thing that was mentioned in the press conference, Robert Saleh on Jim Wyatt's Twitter says Ward's arm is perfectly healthy. Should that be a little bit extra, vote of confidence for Titans fans going into the season?
Yeah, and I guess I would think that most people weren't super concerned. Just the nature of the injury, it wasn't like, hey, this is a rotator cuff injury that's got to get fixed, or even worse, something elbow related. So, I think with it kind of being an AC joint separation, that being a relatively common thing for football players, period, and then on top of it, quarterbacks in general. That I wasn't anticipating would be an issue. I think most people probably felt a similar way. And then just to get that confirmation is good to hear this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim, when you were playing, like going through OTAs, for the Titans' sake, they're like one of the younger teams in the NFL right now. But when you were a part of OTAs, what was that feeling like to just get the installs and finally be back just with the helmet on, just slinging the rock?
It's really exciting. I mean, it's really exciting, for everybody. And I think that it's probably the case for all 32, NFL franchises to say, look, there's just so much optimism this time of year, right? You've had a break. You can, kind of look at your prospects for the upcoming season, and every team's got talent on it. And there's usually new coaches and, everyone's for the most part healthy. And so I think when you look at it that way, it's just, there's a sense of, look, this could be a good year for us. And I think that just across the board, it feels that way. And so I think even for a team, like you said, a young team like the Titans, with a quarterback that people are, excited about and would think will have a much better year 2 than year 1, that's, it's kind of the things that drive the optimism. And so that same thing you feel as a fan base, I think the locker room feels it the same way.
Yeah, and kind of adding on to the roster and front office point, Titans hiring Dave Gardy from the Washington Commanders. What can you tell us about him that kind of helps out this entire front office?
I think that like anytime, you're looking at leadership, for your team in terms of, everything you do in terms of how you operate as an organization, like those things matter. I was just talking about, hey, there's international games and international travel. Like it's such a big undertaking in terms of just how you conduct your business. So, not knowing every, aspect of the organization that he will, directly have his fingerprints on. But obviously, when you're talking about multiple decades of experience, working in the National Football League, understanding how teams operate, what works and what doesn't work in terms of, just the culture of your organization, the, the things that you need to do salary cap wise or, travel wise, how you treat your employees, like all of those things I think are important for, just how everything can run, because, the football team oftentimes is a reflection on how other areas, the health of other areas of your organization.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned salary cap there. Like, if we go back to the A.J. Brown time when he was here in Tennessee, like, the whole contracts back and forth, like, I think it came out like he was, 1.2 or 1.5 million off of what the deal really was. I don't know how true that is, but it just goes to show you what the front office structure is. If you have that right guy leading you in, I guess, in the right path, that probably doesn't happen. So for the Titans to hire a guy like Dave Jardy from the Washington Commanders, I think it's an impressive hire because it shows direction of the franchise, and to know that his direct, order of business to talk to is Mike Borgonzi.
Yeah, and ultimately you want to have people in your organization that are problem solvers. So like you take the A.J. Brown situation, if, to your point, like if it was something close, it's like, all right, well, how do you solve that problem? If the hang up was, an agent, wanting, a certain average per year, but like this is really what we're dealing with, like how do you meet somewhere where, all sides can end up being happy? And look, that can be the case, on a number of different fronts, right? In terms of, retaining an assistant coach or, promoting somebody, creating a title for somebody in order to keep them, or, maybe being ahead of the game in terms of identifying a young player that you're like, hey, let's just extend this guy now because it'll be less expensive extending his contract now than trying to do it later after he has another year or two in the league.
Yeah, when it comes to extending players, and Joe and I were having this conversation on Tuesday briefly about just the current roster and what the contracts look like, minus the draft class they had this past, NFL draft, that is, there's not that many players that are going to be on this roster when it comes to that 2030 Super Bowl here in the Music City. Do you think that's just calculated to the point where they're slowly adding up to maybe build up to be one of those contending teams for the Super Bowl that season?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that every team that has a young quarterback that's on a rookie contract that they think is the guy, I think they all are, operate in this realm of, okay, let's identify, let's get a sense of, our football team, where we are, how good the quarterback is, and then that'll help us figure out how much we step on the gas when we have this quarterback on a rookie contract. And so I think you've seen it, at times places where, a young quarterback plays really well early in his career. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, hey, before we need to, extend him, let's step on the gas as much as possible. And so feels like, the Bears are a team that have done, something similar to that. Feels like the Broncos, in a way have, desired something like that. And so, look, I think even, you look at the 49ers back when Brock Purdy, was, on a rookie contract, it was like, oh, okay, let's get things around him. So, look, New England will be a team that does that. And I think the Titans, are a team that should be looking at it in a way to say, hey, look, this is a young quarterback that we think can play really well. And let's be prepared. While the roster may not look like it immediately right now and, 2026, in a couple of years, it could look drastically different.
Yeah, kind of we briefly spoke on the Super Bowl there just in the conversation. And, like, obviously you've been in Nashville for, over a decade in a roundabout way. Did you ever think the Titans and or the Nashville, that is, host a Super Bowl? I mean, to me, being a Nashvilleian through and through, my jaw dropped when I heard the news, like, no way.
Yeah, look, back in 2015, I guess it was, when we decided to move to Nashville, one of the things we kind of were drawn to, we were coming from New York City. One of the things we were drawn to was just, it was a smaller city. It was more manageable. I mean, it was, you could get in and out of BNA real easy. And so to think that the city would have grown the way that it has, there's no way I thought that, 2030 there'd be a Super Bowl in Nashville. Now, I will say, look, it's incredibly exciting for this city. And I think it's, between what's happened with the draft and, you just go back to that era a little bit of, when the Predators were really, playing well and in the postseason, and the excitement and quite frankly, the way the city would host, the way the city would host, big events, I think was outstanding. I think it definitely made its mark on the National Football League. I just know, ESPN that obviously, does a lot with the NFL draft. The overwhelming feeling was, wow, Nashville did an amazing job with the NFL draft. So, when you just look at the increase in hotels and hotel rooms to be able to host a Super Bowl, the excitement that'll be surrounding it, I think is there for the NFL. It's certainly there for the city and hopefully, the entire community.
Yeah, I was telling this to Joe Tuesday when we were on together, and I was like, this is more not just a local thing, it's more of a global thing. It now puts Nashville on the map. And I followed up with, like, how does this help them get in the rotation for the Super Bowl? Obviously, there's a lot of the NFL international games, Melbourne, Australia, Paris, France, Munich, Germany. How does Nashville now get in the rotation of Super Bowls when all this is taking place?
I think some of it is the experience and how you host it. I think unfortunately some of it is going to be out of control in terms of weather. Look, here in Nashville that time of year, it can look, we could get a gorgeous day, or it could be kind of nasty. I mean, It's just and look, New York hosted a Super Bowl, and I think by and large they were fortunate with the weather that year. There are times it's been in Minnesota, and it's been really hard for people to get around because it's been so cold. So I do think that there's going to be an element of the elements being a factor. I do think our infrastructure in terms of, is traffic going to be something that, makes it impossible for people to get around? I think that could be a problem. Like, in Houston, for example, as spread out as it is, when the Super Bowl's been in Houston, it has, I can't say the infrastructure's handled it extremely well. And so I think those are some things that could play into it that are, somewhat out of the city's control. And because I don't think in terms of hosting it and the activities and the excitement and quite frankly, the number of, hotel rooms and venues to be able to host large events around the city, I think Nashville is going to do an incredible job with that.
Hopefully so, indeed. That's Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. We'll have more with him on the other side right here on the Jason McJoe Show, 102.5 The Game. Back here, 102.5 The Game, Chase and Big Joe Show, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier. Hey, tune in for the Indy 500 race on 102.5 The Game this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Twin Peaks, home of the 29-degree beer and the Bruschetta Bourbon Music City Grand Prix. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier back here on 102.5 The Game, joined by ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, getting back into the NFL at more of a broader scale when it comes to the league itself. The AFC North just seems to always have headlines every single offseason, and one of those leading the pack is Aaron Rodgers. Do you finally believe him? Is this the last year we see Aaron Rodgers in pads?
I do think it's going to be the last year because, one, I mean, he's just getting up there in age, and eventually, you know, what he doesn't move the same way, and so I just do think that there's going to be, you know, part of him, even though he can still play at a starter level, that you know, knows that it's time. And I do think that Pittsburgh is going to need to reset at the position. I just think that, look, Mike McCarthy has got his dream job. He's going to want to have success, and he's going to want to be good towards the end of his contract. And it's just going to be hard to do that when, you know, you have a quarterback that's, you know, well into his 40s.
Yeah, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on the backup quarterback situation because, you know, you get Drew Aller, but you already have Will Howard and Mason Rudolph in that room. It just seems like a cluster of just different styles of quarterbacks. Personally, to me, I think Will Howard, if you just invest in him, there could be some promise there.
Yeah, and it feels like that's what they're doing. It sounds like he's been the guy that when Aaron wasn't there was getting the first reps. Sounds like when Aaron's been there that he's been getting the second reps. You know, I think they probably feel like Mason Rudolph, you know, they know what they have in him. And then, you know, Aller obviously, you know, is just, you know, new to the organization. So it would not shock me if, you know, if Mason Rudolph kind of ended up being the odd man out. And, you know, if that was the case, you know, could end up somewhere, you know, at a team that just doesn't have as much experience, you know, in the quarterback room and, you know, kind of doing something similar to, you know, what Pittsburgh was trying to do when they brought him in.
Yeah, and then another team in the AFC North, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Still return your Lamar Jacksons, your Derrick Henrys. Now adding another AFC North player, but from a different team, Trey Hendrickson. How do you see that, I guess, folding out for a team like Baltimore? Was that their missing puzzle piece to their equation?
Well, I think they definitely wanted to get better on the O&D line. They definitely did that with, you know, signing Hendrickson on the defensive line. They also drafted, you know, the position. But, you know, I think there's a little concern currently with, you know, who their center is going to be. Obviously, they lose Tyler Lindenbaum of the Raiders in free agency. They did add John Simpson. I do think that they will probably continue to address the interior offensive line. They're probably still the favorite to win the division, if we're being honest. Look, Lamar Jackson's just 2 years removed from throwing 41 touchdown passes. You know, they're an organization that, you know, has been pretty stable and successful. And, you know, I do think they still have a lot of talent. You know, you mentioned Derrick Henry, obviously, and Lamar. I do think that they just, personnel-wise in their roster, are a really good team. And then when you look at the rest of the division, you know, there's been significant change pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, and sticking to the Baltimore Ravens for a quick second, when you look at just that offensive style, you're obviously going to be relying on Lamar and Derrick, but you're now missing Patrick Ricard, your fullback, Isaiah Likely, who is kind of your tight end number 2 in that offense. Does that play much of an impact with the way they kind of want to go about things this fall?
You know, I would think so, you know, to an extent. I still think that, you know, you can find ways to be a really physical team. And then because Lamar's added element as a runner, you know, that can help you in terms of number count, in terms of how you're accounting for everybody in the front and getting angles in the run game. And so, you know, I do think that they've probably, as Derrick Henry's gotten older, tried to, you know, manage how much they lean on him early in the year or in, you know, non-divisional games. But, you know, I think ultimately they'll still want to be really, you know, be a physical, you know, run-first team with him in the backfield. And, look, I think when you have defensive-minded head coaches, that's oftentimes the direction that they like to lean.
And then the last two teams in that AFC North, before I get to a Titans thought here, you look at the Browns, the quarterback situation is still a question mark. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals now without Trey Hendrickson. You go and grab Dexter Lawrence from the Giants. How does that fold out for a team like Cincinnati to where they don't really know, like, are you going to get a fully healthy Joe Burrow? Is the line going to keep him upright? And then as for Cleveland, who the quarterback is going to be is still a question.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, Burrow has been in the league 6 years. He's only started every game 3 times. And so, look, it's hard to be good when, your star quarterback is, only playing is playing the whole season half the time. And so, between the struggles on defense a year ago and the fact that the quarterback has had a hard time staying healthy, it's hard to rely on an organization like that. Now, they've kind of revamped their defense completely, which they, obviously needed to do with how they performed a year ago. But look, there hasn't exactly been a franchise of stability. And then in Cleveland, they've had a really good roster. They just haven't been able to find good quarterback play. So, Todd Monken will be, probably in some ways the right man to try to get that fixed. But you just have to wonder if there is even anybody that's on the roster that, can, essentially get that turned around.
Yeah, I know. I was going to do a Titans thought real quick, but before I get to that, I've been talking a lot about the AFC teams. What team in the NFC is maybe one you have your eye on or might be surprising for fans this year?
I don't know if, we seem to talk about them so much, but like they really haven't been all that good in recent years, but I think they're going to be very good this year. I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. I think there's a chance that they've got, one of the best offenses in football. Last year when they, lose, arguably the best defensive player in the game. And so, with some of the changes in the, NFC East, I actually think Dallas is a team that if they get off to a pretty good start, which I think they can do, they might be one of these teams. It's like, it's going to make sense that we've actually talked about them all season long because they ended up, being a team that's going to make some noise.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the Eagles sometimes can get off to a slow start to the season. You really don't know what you're going to get with John Harbaugh and the New York Giants. So, yeah, that could be an open division for the Dallas Cowboys to take it right at the bull with the horns. So I like that. That is everybody in America is a big Cowboys fan, closet Cowboys fan in a roundabout way. But my last thought before I let you go, Tim, and it's still the quarterback position with the Tennessee Titans, not about Cam Ward, but the backup quarterback and Will Levis coming into his last year of his contract. There was I believe a quote that was out there about Brian Daboll saying this could be a fresh start for a guy like Will Levis. How do you see this playing out? Is this more of a preseason darling to where maybe they might find a trade suitor for him?
I mean, it feels like they would be looking for a trade partner for him. Just you bring in Mitchell Trubisky, obviously has a history with Daboll. You would think based on that move, what they're paying him, that he's going to be the backup, which means you've got a second-round pick as your third quarterback, and you've got Hendon Hooker, who maybe you could see as a developmental prospect. So I do think that if there's an opportunity to move Levis, I feel like that is something that the Titans would look to do. It just, as you look around the league, some of these rooms and some of these teams that, just are trying to save money at that spot. Like, I don't know that there's always going to be a trade partner. You almost have to wait and see if, there's an injury to a starter somewhere that creates an opportunity for someone to say, shoot, we need to go get a guy like Levis who, potentially could turn into a starter. Because I do think there'll be some people that view him that way.
Great stuff, Tim, as always. Get a little Innsworth Tigers update before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're graduation coming this weekend, so a little lull before, we hit Memorial Day, and then be back at it, trying to gear up for a good season. So it's a good time of year for high school football around the state. Very good time of year.
There you go, man. How many whistles you going through this year? 1, 2, 7?
Hey, I've had the same whistle the whole time, so I haven't even had to get a new one yet. So I'm going on year 3 on the same whistle.
I love it, man. I love it. Tim, we appreciate the time as always, man. We'll catch up with you next week, all right?
You got it, man. See you next.
That's Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us here on the Jason McJoe Show. Great stuff from Tim, as always. I thought his thoughts about the AFC North were real interesting, just, about Baltimore, especially Cleveland. And Cincinnati, he's right. They just have to keep Joe Burrow upright and healthy, and they could be one of those top teams that could compete for that division. But we'll react to some of that, get into that college football conversation we kind of teased at the beginning of the show right here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Cruz got me moving my shoulders left and right. There's some good music coming back here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game, out here at Cracker Barrel, 3454 Percy Priest Drive. Hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel at 102.5 The Game for live show and exclusive content. You can see faces like Chase, Joe Rexroad, Robbie Stanley, the afternoon show, everybody, and including me right now. So you can go over there and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And, getting into some of Tim Hasselbeck's thoughts about the NFL there, along with our conversation getting into the college football realm of it all, potential breakaway league, and just some of the NIL issues that are going on currently with the funding of it all. But, Cruz, your initial thoughts on some of the things that Tim had to say about the Titans and also the AFC North.
Yeah. I mean, the AFC North stuff especially is very interesting. You know, you got teams like Cleveland and Cincinnati who both were, pretty underwhelming a season ago, but kind of like the Titans, they're on the uptrend right now. So I'm interested to see what both of those teams are doing, both in Ohio, by the way. Really interested to see what happens there. What a world that would be where both Cleveland and Cincinnati are both competitive, huh?
Yeah, it would be kind of crazy. And look, just keep Joe Burrow healthy, and I think they're literally a top contender for that division. They have to be. Because, I mean, look, to be fair, like, I understand Cleveland always is somewhat in the running, not always at the top, but always in the middle. Just that quarterback room. If you can just situate that, you can fix all your problems. But, no, if Cincinnati can just keep Joe Burrow healthy, along with running the ball with Chase Brown, and see what you can do with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase.
They've got weapons. Weapons. There's no question about it. But again, you've seen this time and time again in all sorts of different sports. It doesn't matter who you have on the roster. If you can't, A, keep them healthy, and B, you can't get them to gel together, it's all going to be for none. I'll use Tennessee women's basketball as an example this past year. They had, I believe, 5-star recruits coming out of high school this year, and they were bounced in the first round of the NCAA tournament in embarrassing fashion. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen in equal terms in the NFL with Cincinnati, but you can have all the star power in the world, but if you don't have the right pieces in place, you can't keep people healthy, and you can't get them to commit to the team and gel together, you're not going to be successful. So Cincinnati has the pieces in place. They've got to get them to buy in, though, and they also have to get them to stay healthy.
Yeah, and another thing that I heard from Tim that I was real intrigued with, you mentioned the Dallas Cowboys being that surprising team in the NFC. It makes sense because, again, to what I said to his question or his answer there was, like, you really don't know what you're going to get with the New York Giants. Like, I understand they have Jackson Dart. I understand Cam Scatterbu's there. Malik Neighbors is their, top wide receiver, but he had that knee scoping thing that went on a couple weeks ago. Again, I don't know if that's, too much to worry about, but if it's your top wide receiver and you're getting your knee looked at, I mean, I think it's just more of like a cleaning type thing, but that to me would be a little concerning if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, and that's the thing too with knee injuries. Like I've had a knee injury myself, and those things don't go away. They always stick with you in one way or another. It doesn't matter how much cleaning up they do. It doesn't matter how much work they do on it. Those are going to follow you around for really as long as your playing career continues. And so that's definitely something to be concerned about. But the good thing is they've got a long off season to try to take care of that and hopefully get them healthy by the time the year starts. But that's always something to keep an eye on when somebody, especially if it's a reoccurring, like a nagging, sort of knee injury. Those things just don't go away. People could say they go away, but I could tell you from experience that that's not the case.
Yeah, boots on the ground type experience for you there. And like to the other teams in that division, you have the Giants. I already said the Giants, but the Eagles, one of them being that. And yes, they got off to a pretty decent start last year. Everybody knows the whole Jalen Hurts, Cam Ward conversation I had last week. I'll still stick to my word on that. But I could see the Eagles kind of struggling a little bit with the potential departure, I guess, waiting on the departure of A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots. That, to me, is going to mess with that offensive chemistry. And I've mentioned it multiple times, when you have guys like Eli Stowers and even Mekhi Lemon who are coming into this offense, you're trying to figure out where their best fit is. If it's a certain, down and distance, or if it's an every down type, situation. I think for Mekhi Lemon, yeah, he's your slot guy for sure. As for Devontae Smith, we have all seen flashes of what he could do at Alabama. We've seen flashes of what he could do with the Eagles. Definitely has been one of those top wide receivers overall in the NFL. I'm curious to see how he takes that next step up as the true wide receiver one of that Eagles offense.
Well, if the wide receiver room gets shaken up, then he's going to have no choice but to, step up. I mean, if it thins out a little bit, his role is going to be expanded. And so he's not really going to have a choice. He's going to have to step up and take a bigger role and have a bigger impact in that Eagles wide receiver room. So, I don't think whether it's a fact of whether he can do it. I think he's going to have to. And if he, is able to do it, then great. If not, then the Eagles are going to have some serious problems.
Yeah. And another aspect of all this is you look at a guy like Saquon Barkley, who had over 1,100 yards rushing last year. You wonder how much you rely on a running back like that when you'll be without, at some point, A.J. Brown. That is something I want to know what the balance is between run game and pass game for them. We've all seen, the tush push, the run game with Saquon, but how much of that is going to be like somewhat of a play action where they can toss it to a guy like Mekhi Lemon and or even Eli Stowers, these young players.
I mean, logic just tells you that you have to mix it up a little bit. I mean, I know Saquon Barkley is an Iron Man. He's one of the best running backs in the NFL today, but and he's built. He's big, he's strong, and he can take a lot of hits. He did it at Penn State. He's done it in the NFL for however long, but it's easy for defenses to read also. You've got to mix it up a little bit, make the defense, guess time and time again, because if you just punch it up the middle every single time that you have the ball, the defense is going to know exactly where you're going to go for it. So you got to keep a healthy mix. It doesn't matter how good of a running back you have. Got to mix it up somehow.
Yeah, and that's why, looking at that Titans-Eagles matchup in week 2, it's going to be early in the season. You're going to still try, like I was talking about with Stowers and Lemon, you're trying to figure out that chemistry, how much of targets they get the first week, if they can kind of figure it out. It's a prime opportunity for the Tennessee Titans to take advantage of the Eagles in that situation, because the following week, the Eagles have the Chicago Bears. And to me, Eagles-Bears sounds like more of a back and forth matchup where there's the Titans and the Eagles. So, a lot of people nationally will overlook the Titans in that week 2 matchup. And for that case, it's a good way for the Titans to say, hey, we have the chemistry, we have the players to where we can, be overlooked and then flourish in that opportunity.
Yeah, that's the definition of a trap game right there, though. You're so focused on a team like Chicago, and we all know what they did last year. You come in to play a team like Tennessee, who was a bottom dweller this past year, but a team that is on the upcome. That could easily be a trap game for them. You might get yourself off to a slow start, try to overlook them, knowing that you have Chicago the next week. And that's when you can find yourself in some trouble. So Tennessee needs to take full advantage of the fact that that's how the schedule lines up for them, and try to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and if you look at the Robert Saleh defenses, they've had a really good interior line and defensive line, that is. The Tennessee Titans going into this season have a pretty darn good on paper interior defensive line. And you wonder how much of the distribution goes to Saquon Barkley, because if he's getting 22 to 24 touches, maybe even 26 in some cases of touches for the game, that's going to start wearing down on your running back and make your offense one-dimensional, which makes it a lot easier for a defense to stop you, which is another reason why that could be +1 for the Tennessee Titans in week 2.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, going back to what I was saying, if you rely on Saquon Barkley, just as if you were to rely on the pass game the entire time, it doesn't matter, what version of the game you're playing, whether you're punching it up the gut every single time or whether you're trying to air it out downfield. If you don't mix it up there a little bit, the defense is going to know exactly what's coming next, and then it makes it really easy for them to cover. You don't have, in this case, it wouldn't be Saquon Barkley, but let's say they just rely on the pass game. You don't have Saquon Barkley warmed up to, get his run game going, and vice versa. You keep Saquon Barkley punching up the middle, your wide receivers aren't going to be, integrated into the game as well as they could be if they were in the mix more often. So, you've got to have multi-dimensional offenses. It's the same thing in every single other sport, that humanity has ever created where there's a ball involved. You've got to have a multi-dimensional offensive attack. And if they don't have that, then that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of getting to the other sports of it all, it's still the same sport. But when you go to the college football realm of it all, a lot of chaos right now with NIL, a lot of that money, I think $125 million. I was reading an article from Ross Dellinger saying that it's all frozen right now because they don't really have a true answer of what to do with if they're going to have a breakaway league, if they're going to wait this out, all that fun stuff. It goes to show you that, like I talked about at the beginning of the show, Tony Petitti can just wait this thing out on a lazy boy and say, hey, we have some of the best programs in all of the U.S. right now. We're just going to see how this plays. And they'll just keep collecting the check and distributing it all over the place. Because, I mean, looking at all these schools in each conference, let me see if I have the numbers in front of me. I know I do on one of these tabs. Oh, my goodness. Just please stand by. We're in a holding pattern here. as I try to figure.
I can't
out
wait
my
to hear those
computer.
Big Ten numbers, Nick.
Yeah, they are pretty big. Let's put it that. There we go. I found it. Thank goodness. I'd have to do the math on this when it comes to Big 12 and the ACC. But when it comes to the Big 10 and the SEC, Big 10 leads all conferences with like $1.37 billion to all 18 members of the 20. To all that, goodness gracious, all the universities in that conference. You look at the SEC, just right underneath $1.03 billion amongst all the teams in that conference. Then you go to the Big 12 and the ACC, which seems to be the little brother in this conversation. It's like the Big 10 and the SEC are the twins, the big-headed monsters in this conversation. Then you have the Big 12 and the ACC, and it's different, like 45 to 50 million per school. I mean, slowly but surely, there's just a difference. For sure, there's a difference. And I know there are people that have, I think it was, I was reading the article, continuing on that Ross Dellinger article, and it was the ACC in their spring meetings were like, well, why don't we just, incorporate the SCORE Act and just kind of cap off certain NIL values and to bring in more money from current donors. It doesn't work that way. That's the thing is you have way too many hands in the cookie jar, and you can't seem to figure out which ones you need to take out. You get what you follow me there, Chris?
No, I'm following you 100%. And everybody thinks that a problem is always so much simpler than it actually is. There's so many nuances to so many problems out there, especially when it comes to financial problems like what we're dealing with right now here with the NIL collectives and whatnot. It's not that easy. Now, I don't think that federal, integration with this is the best way forward, but I feel like there does need to be some kind of cap to NIL money because there are going to be a lot of schools that have a lot more money than a lot of other schools. This is coming from a guy who graduated from Indiana University, who has the largest alumni base in the country and arguably with some of the best NIL funding in the country. I feel like there needs to be some kind of cap to keep things competitive because there are going to be, schools like the Indianas of the world, the Ohio States of the world, the Michigans of the world, or I guess in the SEC, the Tennessees, the Kentuckys, the Floridas that can outspend other schools and are going to be able to bring in top talent time and time again. Whereas I think it would probably have to be a conference by conference sort of cap to it, right? Just to keep things competitive. I don't know if a federal overhand is going to be the way to go. I feel like the conferences should make that decision. But then again, if the conferences do that, they're kind of going to be a detriment to themselves because then they won't be able to spend as much money on NIL to get some of the best players, and they might be hindering some of their growth. So again, that's why this issue is so complex because there's just so many different ways that this can go about itself. And and so many, like you said, so many hands in the cookie jar, so many people involved that there's just no one straightforward answer.
Yeah, I may have a thought that could potentially solve all these issues. Probably not, but maybe. We'll get to that on the other side right here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Back here on Chase and McJoe Show, 102.5 The Game, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier with Cruz Martin as well. As we were discussing before the break about college football, I guess, playoff, along with the college football, just society as a general and how they're trying to figure things out. There was one thing we were talking about with NIL and how to kind of like not really cap it, but still find a solution for it, Cruz. And here's my thought. And I brought this up to Mike Organ. He said it was a no-go, but I still think there's an out, maybe a backdoor chance it could happen. Instead of capping how much money there is for NIL, how about you cap, like, let's say you only have 3 to 4. I said 5. 5 was my maximum amount of NIL deals you can do with, like, organizations. If they want to endorse you as a clothing brand or whatever, they could pay you whatever money they want, but you're only designated to have 5 NIL deals. Does that seem pretty fair?
I don't know if that is exactly the way that I would go about it. I see what you're saying there. I do see what you're saying there, but I don't know if that's exactly the way it goes. The way that I see it, and this is something that I've had an issue with, and people could take issue with it, they cannot, but this is what I think is the big problem. It's not so much the NIL that the players make outside of the university or
Right.
wherever they play at. Caitlin Clark, for example, a couple of years ago, biggest athlete arguably in sports, especially it's certainly in basketball, both men's and women's. But, the amount of NIL deals that she got, it seems a little bit unfair to cut her short on what she would have been able to do. Now, I will say on the flip side of that, I think that there should be with the revenue sharing, which is something that I've not had an issue with athletes having, but I've more so had an issue with the problems that arise from it. The revenue sharing needs to have some sort of cap to it. The NIL, what players go out and get on their own is fine. But what schools are giving their players in terms of revenue sharing, in terms of straight up money coming from the university, needs to be capped in some sort of way to allow, schools that don't have those resources that others do be competitive. You see the same thing in the MLB. Now, in the MLB, it's not always working out. Look at the New York Mets, for example. They have one of the highest payrolls in all of Major League Baseball, and they've been a dumpster fire for the last year and a half. But the LA Dodgers, for example, though, I think they have one of the largest payrolls in Major League Baseball, and they have back-to-back World Series titles looking for a three-peat. So yeah, I think that you could end up seeing the same thing happen in college sports, and nobody wants that. Let's be honest. Nobody wants to see that happen in college sports either, where if you pay, you win. Nobody wants to see that.
Exactly, because then that really sets apart, blue bloods and, the teams that are somewhat trying to make it a competition. Like, let's say if it's a 12-team playoff, those teams that are 9, 10, and 11, they're not as quality as the top 5 or top 4.
No, exactly. And that's what college sports needs to avoid, because, you're around people all the time who talk about college sports. I'm around people who talk about college sports all the time. And there's been a change in college athletics, and people have noticed it. People say all the time, college sports isn't what it used to be. And that's very true, both in good ways, but also in bad ways. And I think that, with revenue sharing, it's going to allow certain schools to become more successful and sustain that success. And other schools are going to get left in the dust. Now, I'm not saying that we need to, make sure that every school has an opportunity to win every single year. I'm not saying that. They decide that on their own, but give everybody equal starting ground to go with, and then let the programs do what they may with what the resources that they have.
Yeah, and there was something that came out last fall about how 75% of what NIL values should go to the university and then be dispersed amongst the certain sport, if it's basketball, football, or even like the club sports. There was some article about that, and it fascinated me because, like, yes, it works, but at the same time, it doesn't, because again, it caps the player and how much they make. Yeah.
I don't think that. Again, going back to your point a couple of moments ago, I don't think that we need to cap the NIL deals. Let's say, like, that somebody wants to do a deal with 102.5 The Game. We don't cap what athletes can do with those outside of the university. But yeah, going back to revenue sharing and what schools can give to players, I think that there needs to be at least some sort of relative ceiling for it. Maybe not a solid ceiling, but just kind of a ballpark figure to keep it under. Now, how they're going to enforce that, I really don't know. I mean, financial penalties maybe, or maybe postseason penalties or something of that sort. Again, these are issues that are extremely complex, and you're talking to a guy who is not very smart. That's what I like to say. So this is way beyond my brain capacity to figure these problems out. But I think that we can help and just throw some ideas out there and see what sticks.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us for sure. Cutting short on this hour. We got the mayor, Freddie O'Connell, joining us at 2:00. Got some fun stuff to chat with him about right here on the Jason McJoe Show in hour number 3, 102.5 The Game. Hour number 3, Chasing Big Joe, 102.5 The Game. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier in today. And now we're joined by Mayor of Nashville, Freddie O'Connell. Mr. O'Connell, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you guys?
Doing well. Obviously, the big news in the Music City is the Super Bowl coming to Nashville.
Super Bowl?
In 2030. How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's just me being a Nashvilleian through and through. It's just I never would have thought the day that the Super Bowl would be coming to Nashville and expanding not only from a local brand but to a global brand.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting too, just to watch in the NFL, right? We've obviously seen the Titans play in London, but this season, seeing for several weeks in a row a bunch of international games, right? We're basically doing international friendlies with American football, and it's pretty remarkable to see it.
Yeah, and just looking at it from that perspective of you talk about international soccer coming to Nashville, you talk about obviously the Titans as well being a part of that brand with Nissan Stadium. Just the build up to Super Bowl 2030. How did this all come about? Obviously, there were some conversations probably behind closed doors, but when did you see the paper come onto your front desk?
Well, I mean, I'll say the part that got real official was pretty recent. I mean, in fact, I put in a letter of support for the bid, maybe a few months ago, but then it's sort of that's when the league is having their conversations. I'm sure, the team and we had a bid committee that you probably heard about. But I mean, it's not like I went to Commissioner Goodell's office or, any of that. I think there was I think, honestly, from the moment we knew we were building a new stadium, it was clearly designed with sort of a, hey guys, this is what we're thinking. Think we could have a Super Bowl someday. And so then once it was clear that the stadium project was going to proceed, then the next piece of it is, okay, well, let's see if a Super Bowl is a realistic prospect. And I think that's where the kind of successes we've had as a city overall, being able to now know that we can invest in transportation infrastructure for years to come, to know that we've been working on a variety of strategies for improvements in public safety, like all the things that are going to make a better experience on the ground for Nashvilleians also happen to make Nashville a more likely prospect to be able to host a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and to that point as well, how does Nashville capitalize on this to be now in the rotation, do you think, for another Super Bowl in the future?
It's interesting. Probably be interested to talk to Las Vegas because they've shown that a city can do it in a 5-year loop, right? I think for us, though, the proof has got to be, can we deliver a Super Bowl that's not just in Nashville, but for Nashville, right? Like, we ultimately want the effect of the big game here to result in not just a better fan experience for who are experiencing the Super Bowl, which will be exciting. And we've seen kind of a template for that with how the Preds did all of the activity around the Stanley Cup run a few years back, right? I think we know we can do that as a city. We can make it really fun to experience the game, even if you're not in Nissan Stadium. I think that's going to be really fun to work on with people throughout the city. But I think, too, it's sort of like, how do you take these platforms like what the Titans are doing with One Community and the NFL having these legacy programs and the work we're doing on the ground and the work we're doing on the East Bank and say, these are things that have a lasting positive impact for the city. And I think that's really going to be our mission.
Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell is on the line with us. When it comes to just the buildup for 2030 and getting ready for it, what does Nashville specifically need to, I guess, not improve on, but just get ready for 2030? Is it, like you talked about earlier, the transportation, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think transportation and infrastructure is a big piece of it. The Titans have been a great partner as we've looked to make it easier to get to and from Titans games. They were, these past couple of years, the existing Nissan Stadium, they've really improved their level of partnership and coordination with the city so that we could actually, instead of diverting transit away from special events, help people get there. And in fact, they've partnered to make regional transit an option. And, the Star for Titans games, that's a very popular option for people. And so that whole process of making sure traffic isn't a big issue. And then, we've got some exciting things coming with the East Bank that I think will help with that too. As Oracle builds out their campus in the River North portion of East Bank, it looks like they may be even trying to start construction on a second pedestrian bridge across the Cumberland River as soon as this fall, and that would be another great addition. We're already under construction with some brand new streets that are part of the Imagine East Bank plan for that whole area. But we've got to work with TDOT. We've got to work, to get James Robertson Parkway kind of reconditioned to fit in with that overall master plan for the East Bank. And then we're obviously excited about, the build out that's going to happen over there too. I think it's going to be really exciting that by next week, we'll be breaking ground on the first residential project over there that'll have a century's worth of affordable housing. That's good news.
It really is. You're absolutely right. When it comes to other stuff downtown, like CMA Fest, I'm trying to think. We've had the draft here previously downtown. Just is that something else that kind of gave Nashville and also other people a part of these conversations about having the Super Bowl here more reassurance that this city can hold a big event like this?
I think that's a big part of it. You might have heard in the event announcement yesterday that Peter O'Reilly from the league kind of said Nashville helped the league establish a new reference standard for what the draft can be. And I continue to hear positive experiences, but I think people were looking at Nashville as far back as the NHL All-Star Game. I mean, I still maintain that one of the best sports experiences I've had in my life as a Nashvilleian has been the Stanley Cup run. I mean, it's really great. And we've seen, again, as we've added Nashville SC to the mix and seen what they've done with some of these pop-up watch parties, even when the team's on the road. And you kind of already alluded to the fact that we've shown we can be competitive with FIFA and the Olympics. I mean, so we've been building up some momentum in terms of how we offer not just great sports experiences, but just overall great entertainment experiences.
Yeah, you mentioned Nashville, a team that's the best in the East right now in the MLS.
Yeah,
and also to that point, you mentioned globally at the beginning of this conversation, Liverpool coming to Geodis Park July 25th, and that being a fun game. That's Liverpool versus Sunderland. That also brings that global recognition for Nashville specifically as well.
Yeah, and we had that kind of Premier League visit a couple of years ago that was exciting. We've seen, FIFA brought their League Cup here. We know already that we've got the Japan men's national team here for a training day event en route to the World Cup, right? So there's a lot of global footprint happening with the way sports are interacting with the city right now. And, we've already been adding global touch points for people to, we've got these new direct flights to Ireland and Iceland. And so people are able to come over and see what we're doing. And so, it's great. And I think for a quarter century now, we've been successfully, showing people across the world how we're Music City, USA. But I think now people are starting to realize, there's some really fun other kinds of experiences we can go enjoy in Nashville, and sports is an increasing part of that.
Absolutely. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell is on with us here on the Chase McJoe Show. Mr. O'Connell, appreciate your time, and I guess we'll talk to you down the road and try to stay dry out there. It's a little wet from time to time on these roads.
little wet out there, but we'll stay dry and very excited about all the opportunities we've got at the city right now. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate the time. That's Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell joining the Chase and Big Joe Show. We'll react to some of his thoughts about the Super Bowl coming to Nashville and just more of a global, footprint Nashville has now in the sports world. Coming up next right here on Chase and Big Joe, 102.5 The Game. Back here, third and final hour of the Chase and Big Joe show. Just had on Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell. A lot of high praising things to say about Nashville when it comes to a global footprint for this city. And yeah, the Super Bowl is definitely one of those events where you can say, hey, it's going to it's definitely going to make a different impression on a lot of people, especially if you're traveling globally to the Music City. Again, I would say it's the country music capital of the world, despite what some Australians may say from time to time. And Cronulla, that's a inside joke. Don't know why I haven't mentioned that. But yeah, back here on Chase and Big Joe, 102.5 The Game. Cruz, I mean, you're not a Nashvilleian, but you've lived here a good amount to understand that it's a small-knit community in somewhat of a growing city. For me, I've always looked at Nashville as like that small city. Never would have ever thought in a million years I'd have a Super Bowl.
Well, you got to see it from the way that, you remember it growing up. I see it as a big city because I came from the Louisville, Kentucky area, which is a smaller city than Nashville, and it's not growing nearly as fast as Nashville is. But no, you're absolutely right, though. It still has that kind of, small knit community feel to it. And, for the city to be able to host an event that is so not just nationally impactful, but globally impactful is a huge step forward. I mean, this is a city that brought in, an NHL and NFL franchise not just about 30 years ago, and it's already grown tremendously. Now there's unofficial talks about, a potential NBA move to Nashville. Again, that's a whole nother situation. And then there's been talks for years about trying to find an MLB team to move to Nashville. And now you've got the new Nissan Stadium going up. You get the opportunity to host not only a Super Bowl, but even a Final Four potentially in the future, and all these other great events throughout the entire year. It's great, but the financial impact that a Super Bowl brings to a city cannot be understated. I Googled this while we had the chance. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said that this past Super Bowl in Las Vegas brought in an estimated $1 billion in economic impact with a B, not M, not million, billion with a B. That's a lot of money, Nick Frazier.
Did I hear billion? $1
billion
with
a B. Billion.
A lot of money. That is a lot of money. And when Freddie O'Connell was talking about just Nashville, and I asked him about possibly getting in the rotation of a Super Bowl, to me, and you even mentioned it right there, hosting March Madness tournaments, hosting college football playoff games, like that's the next step to know if Nashville can be a reoccurring, name in this Super Bowl rotation.
I think they will be. I mean, they're already one of the entertainment capitals of the country. You mentioned whatever the Aussies say. I don't even know what that's about, but
yeah,
this is
I'll share it with you real quick.
Whatever you're about to tell me is not going to change my mind. This is the country music capital of the world. There's no question about it. The entertainment value that there is in Nashville, whether it's going to, Broadway or whether it's going to any of these other, spots across town, people flock here for a bunch of different reasons. It's a tourist destination, and it's only going to be that impact's only going to be furthermore now that new Nissan Stadium, the Dome Stadium, is going to be built. You have the opportunity to host Super Bowls, men's Final Fours. And like you said, college football playoff, that hadn't even occurred to me that would be a possibility. But, now that's on the table as well. And so, I don't think that there's any question that Nashville will be able to handle it. Now, the traffic, I don't know. We can talk about that later. But, they got some time to figure that out.
Yeah, we'll hopefully get there for sure. And like, the whole college football playoff conversation is fascinating to me because it follows suit in the MLB conversation for, if there would be expansion of Major League Baseball to Nashville, you have the Cardinals and you also have the Braves, then Nashville's right in the middle. And there's a bunch of farm league teams, especially one in Nashville, and that's in the Central, and that's the Milwaukee Brewers. You wonder how all that plays a factor for the Mercedes-Benz Stadium when it comes to college football playoff, because I'm sure there is, obviously you have the contracts for the SEC championship, that they've hosted a national championship and a college football playoff game there. You wonder how Nashville falls into that category, because it's almost like you're taking a piece of their pie. Like, that is Atlanta's pie. They've always kind of prided themselves on being one of those top sports cities to host these big events. Now Nashville's getting their name and put their name in the hat, and they've been awarded the Super Bowl. So you wonder how that all plays out. It feels like a push and pull vibe to me.
Hey, that's business, baby. That's all it is. It's business. Nashville wants to get their cut, and they're going to get it with this new stadium that's going up. Atlanta's just going to have to deal with it, as are all these other, places that have been able to host men's Final Fours and college football playoffs and Super Bowls. That's just the way it is. And down the road, when another city inevitably gets another one of these state-of-the-art facilities, Nashville's going to have to deal with the fact that somebody's going to be cutting into their pie. That's just the nature of business. But, I think Nashville's doing the right thing and making sure that they get ahead of this curve, because there's still not a whole lot of cities that can host Super Bowls, Final Fours, college football playoff rounds, et cetera, et cetera. So Nashville is an exclusive company once the stadium gets finished off. I mean, it's really gonna have a major impact, probably one of the biggest impactful things that the city of Nashville's had from a sporting and entertainment perspective, probably in the city's history.
Yeah, 100%. And that little tidbit about the Nashville not being the country music capital of the world. When I was in Vegas, I think 2 Marches ago, there was a couple that I met from Cronulla in Australia. And they were saying, yeah, Cronulla is the, country music capital of the world. I was like, I'm not too sure where you're looking at on the map, but if y'all don't say y'all, you ain't a part of the country music capital of the world.
Are we talking about the same country music? We're talking like, Luke Combs, that kind of thing? Like, we're talking the same thing, Eric Church?
Look, I know Australia has a big population and fan base of country music fans. I get that.
I would not have guessed that.
Well, I mean, if you look at all these big country music artists like Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, a few others, I would say, I think obviously Keith Urban, you could say him as well. But they go and do a big Australian tour, and they've done that before. I think it's like in the fall, because when we're in the fall, they're in the summer. Yeah, spring stuff like that. So they, counteract their schedules.
Yeah.
But for that lady to tell me that they're the country music capital of the world, I looked at my brother and I just chuckled. I was like, okay, yeah, have a good evening, and just walked away to enjoy some rugby. So, Nashville will always be the country music capital of the world. If other people say different, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
I would love to hear an Australian try a country accent.
Oh, it's pretty funny. It's like a mixture between trying, I don't know, what's the best way to describe it? It
probably the equivalent of us trying an Australian accent.
Maybe they try to put a lot of like that, in that Knoxville region, a lot of East Tennessee accent to it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really come off right. It comes off a little bit more Australian accent than anything.
Hey, they hate us because they ain't us, right?
Right, exactly. They hate us because they ain't us. Exactly. But yeah, Cruz, we'll get into more stuff on the other side. Kind of getting back into the question today too. Some people have weighed in on the question, which is, where is the best place for a hidden vacation, or where's your favorite spot for a hidden gem for a vacation? So we'll get into some of those texts on the other side, right here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Back here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier here alongside Cruz Martin. Joined now by ESPN senior NHL writer Greg Wyshynski. Greg, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Down in lovely Raleighwood for the game one of the series between Carolina and Montreal. So looking forward to that tonight.
What's the vibe like right now over there?
Well, we're already tailgating at the arena, which is to be expected. It's an interesting spot. You know, like they're passionate about the team. It's just not a place where when you drive around, it feels like a playoff city. You know what I mean? Like there's not banners everywhere. I saw
like Toronto or Edmonton, right?
Yeah, I saw one guy in a jersey today walking around. But like when you go to the arena tonight and the tailgating's happening and the place is like ear-splittingly loud, like I mean, it does feel like a real vibrant hockey town. It's just you got to go to the arena to kind of feel that vibe.
Yeah, and to that point, the vibe last night, kind of before we get to the Carolina series, Vegas, I mean, basically giving Colorado a little bit of some humble pie, saying, look, we're here to play. And a 4-2 win, a convincing win. Obviously, you have the empty netter. But one factor to all this, Mitch Marner collects a point, a guy that's now in the conference final. Is it safe to say that I guess, Mitch Marner haters or critics can kind of, be quiet for a little bit?
Oh, they won't be though. I think Toronto has a couple of different factions of people watching this Vegas series. They got the ones that are angry at Marner for not having done this in Toronto. They got the ones that are kind of like enjoying the Schadenfreude of Marner doing this because it makes the Leafs look bad. And then there's probably just a few people that just like Mitch Marner in general and are happy for him. So it's fascinating to kind of see the reactions to what he's doing. But the bottom line is that, as we noted, we put out the Conn Smythe Watch today on ESPN.com to track playoff MVP. And he's like right behind Freddie Anderson right now in the voting amongst the writers that we polled who ultimately will vote on this award. So, I mean, the assist last night, which was an incredible setup for their second goal. Maybe that puts them over the top. I don't know. But, there's every possibility that at the end of the playoffs, the Vegas Golden Knights are hoisting the cup and Mitch Marner is hoisting the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Yeah. How do you see Vegas faring in the rest of this, I'd say, series? Because it seems like if they can kind of come out the gates hot in game two, this seems kind of lean their way.
Well, they've got crazy depth right now. Like, Eichel has like one goal in the playoffs, but he has got a ton of assists. They're getting offense out of Dorofeyev. They're getting offense out of obviously Marner. Brett Howden's got like 9 goals. Like they're getting a lot of contributions throughout the lineup, and I think that speaks to their overall depth. Carter Hart's getting better every round. Statistically, analytically, he was the best goalie in the second round. And this team's really kind of taken to the John Tortorella system, which is kind of amazing to think that this guy got hired with 8 games left in the season, and he's been able to get that level of buy-in. But I think for more than Vegas right now, it's about Colorado. Like their goaltending started to wobble a little bit in that Minnesota series, and I thought that the first goal that Wedgwood gave up last night was real bad, and kind of set things off on a course towards Vegas winning that game. And then on top of that, obviously the biggest story of the series is the fact that Cale Makar is not playing, and that's really a concern. I mean, he was out for game one. Jared Bednar, their coach, was asked about him today. He's like, I'll let you know tomorrow. Like, he was already diminished physically in the playoffs. But I mean, you take Cale Makar at like 40%, and he's better than most guys are at 100%. To not have him in the lineup in game one was not a very good development for a team that a lot of people thought was going to win the cup this year.
Yeah, that is very true. And looking at the rest of Colorado right now, and you make a good point too of just how they didn't score in the first period and second period. It just didn't really happen for them. And to that, it just is interesting because you look at the goalie perspective of Scott Wedgwood. It's almost like Colorado, if they don't score first, they're just not ahead of the game. Obviously, they're not because of the scoreline, but they're just stylistically. I feel like they have to score first to really get a good grasp of the game and take control. And obviously, when you're behind, you just cannot take control because you're trailing. But it's a push and pull type feel with that team.
It's a little bit of that, but I also think it's a lot of just how Vegas can shut it down defensively. I mean, when you're down like 2-0 and you're chasing the game, that's hard. That's hard to begin with. When you're doing that against a team like Tortorella's that are going to pack a bunch of guys around the goalie and forecheck well and really not allow you much offensively. Colorado didn't really come to life until they pulled the goalie, and then McKinnon made that insane move to set up the Landeskog goal last night. I think your point's well taken, which is that you can't dig yourself a hole against this Vegas team.
Yeah, absolutely. Then going to the other side, talking now about Carolina, talking about they're already barbecuing, tailgating, all the fun stuff. When it comes to a guy like Frederik Andersen, that's just kind of been the, I'd say the concrete part in the back of that defense being the true goalie he is. How much of a factor does he have to play into all this? Obviously, Carolina is a really good team offensively, defensively, but how much has to really rely on his shoulders?
A lot. And I think he's one of the great mysteries of this series because in the past, his postseasons have been ones in which he's suffered an injury or put together some, bad performances back to back to the point where they go with the other goalie. And that's just not happened yet. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's played a couple teams that I think aren't all that great offensively in Ottawa and Philadelphia, which is why his stats look as good as they do. But he's been great. I mean, it's not to say that he hasn't been great. And so the beyond the can Freddie Andersen get him over the finish line aspect of this is also the fact that he is on their penalty kill, obviously as the goaltender, and he's the backbone of it. And one of the most intriguing matchups of the series is a Carolina penalty kill, which is traditionally one of the best in hockey, against a Montreal power play that had like 8 or 9 goals last round against Buffalo, and really, really was what drove them offensively. So that might be the marquee matchup insofar as like tell the tape between these two teams, and obviously Freddie's going to play a big role in that.
Yeah, and I think going back to like the first round and even the second round when they had all their overtime games, and funny enough, all their overtime games were a 3-2 win, I think that showed a lot of question marks that were answered for this Carolina team if they can really go the distance to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question for them in the playoffs is always, do they have enough offense to score a big goal at a big time? Because that's sort of what held them back in those conference finals losses. And, they went chasing Mikko Rantanen. They had him for a minute, and then they traded him to Dallas. And they had Jake Gensel a couple of years ago trying to find that one guy that could do it. And I think whether it was serendipity or not, they ended up with not with a one guy that could score a bunch of goals, but with 3 lines that can score a bunch of goals because of acquiring Logan Stankoven in the Rantanen trade and getting, Taylor Hall during the Rantanen trade and signing Nick Ehlers in the offseason. Like those 3 guys in particular have helped them establish other scoring lines beyond Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis, which has certainly not been the case in recent memory for this team. And if you look at the stats, it's the best offensive team Rod Brendamore's had in terms of goals per game in the regular season, and that's carried over to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of going against the opponent here when it comes to Montreal, a team that basically broke all the hearts of every Buffalo fan on planet Earth. Jacob Dobes, who's just been fantastic for the Montreal Canadiens this postseason. Looking at him as a goaltender in this series, he has to be one of those players that has to step up going forward.
I mean, I think Buffalo broke the hearts of Buffalo fans by absolutely crapping the bed in Game 5 of that series when they should have taken control.
Yep.
He's been great. He reminds me of Jordan Binnington back in that season when the Blues won the Cup. Not only in being a big personality and having a little bit of swagger and being an interesting offbeat rookie, but also having that ability to bounce back after losses. And in 2026. Dobes has only lost back-to-back games once, and that was at the very end of the regular season. He's not done it at all in the playoffs. I think he's like 6-0 after losses. Mm-hmm. And that's a really, really big reason why Montreal is where they are right now, is this ability to, park defeat and not dwell on what didn't go right and then get right back on the ice and win the next game. And so that resiliency has been their calling card, and I think Dobes has been the reason for it.
Now, how much, 2 more for me real quick, how much is it a factor of Montreal playing a full 7-game series in comparison to Carolina, who's just swept everybody? They're 8-0 in the playoffs. First team, I believe, since the Edmonton Oilers in 85, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, How do you equate that? What's better, the momentum riding off of a 7-game series or the extra wait time for a team like Carolina?
It's one of the great mysteries of Game 1 tonight. Montreal not only has played 2 7-game series, but all of these teams played a compressed schedule this year that was one of the most challenging a lot of these players have ever played insofar as the amount of hockey in a short period of time they had to play. So their bodies are already hurting. And then in Carolina's case, it's a historic layoff that we haven't had a team that had this size of gap between 2 series in 107 years. You have to go back to 1919 and Montreal having 12 full days off between series to find someone who has been idle as long as Carolina has. That probably means good things for them physically. They should be well healed up, well rested. I think Rod Brindamore will have them ready to go physically. But mentally, they haven't played an opponent in what will be like basically 12 days. And that's a really long time. And you wonder about being maybe out of that playoff mindset a little bit as one of the Hurricane players told me, Keandre Miller. He's like, at some point your brain resets when you're not in the day-to-day of playoff hockey. And so I'm interested to see what kind of mindset they come out with tonight in Game 1.
Interesting. And to add on to the conversation with the Carolina Hurricanes, one guy that has been, I'd say, somewhat of a name here in Nashville to talk about is Darren York. The Preds are still without a general manager, a guy that's currently the assistant general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes and is also the general manager of their AHL affiliate, the Chicago Wolves. Do you see him being the top candidate in this situation, or is, like you mentioned a couple weeks ago, is Tom Fitzgerald kind of still in that conversation for you?
I feel like if it was going to be Fitz, they would have hired him by now. You know what I mean? And
right.
York's name has come up. There's been people that said that they think he could be the guy. I've talked to people that say I don't think he's going to be the guy. I gotta hand it to Bill Haslam and Barry Trotz and the search committee, because they've been really buttoned up as far as what the name ultimately is going to be for this team. And I don't know. I honestly don't know who they have in mind or who they're looking at. You assume it's somebody involved in these 4 organizations, but that remains to be seen. So, the overall brain trust of the Carolina Hurricanes has always been one of their strongest points. I think Eric Tulsky, their GM, is brilliant and has done an amazing job building out this team. Anybody you get from that front office is going to be good insofar as how they approach the game from a data-driven standpoint, but also just being able to understand the kind of culture that you need to build a winner. But again, all bets are off as to who that'll ultimately be.
Yeah, and this was brought up on Tuesday when I was on with our other show, Next Man Up with Jake Lyman. And I'm curious to see your thoughts on this when it comes to the Nashville Predators, and they have that hockey operations spot along with general manager. Do you think they're just waiting for the playoffs as a whole to be over with so they can find a spot for one person in the hockey ops, or they already kind of have an idea? What do you think about that?
Well, I spoke to somebody who went through the process early on in Nashville, and they told me that at the time they felt that the team was looking for a president of hockey operations and a general manager. I don't know if that's still the template that they have. It could be that they found someone that they believe could handle the entirety of the operation. I will say that, if you look around the way that the off season's gone, the model has been 2 people, whether it's Matt Sundin and John Chayka in Toronto. In Vancouver, it's 3 people because 2 of them are twins, the Sedins getting hired along with Ryan Johnson. So that's sort of been the way that the league has trended a little bit. So it'd be a surprise if it was just one person. But that being said, all it takes is one person to walk in the room and say the right things. And maybe you're thinking they don't need anybody, working on top of them.
Indeed. Greg Wyshynski with ESPN, NHL senior writer. Greg, appreciate the time, man, and enjoy the wonderful voices and screaming and even the tailgating of the Carolina Hurricanes.
Well, I've already enjoyed steak and trash tacos. Raleigh has a lot going for it.
I love to hear that. Love to hear that. Greg, appreciate the time, man. We'll talk next week.
Anytime.
That's Greg Wyshynski, ESPN NHL senior writer, joining us here on the Chase and Big Joe show. A lot of great, insightful stuff from him. And I shouldn't say stuff. Joe's going to hurt me. Great, insightful things that he has said about this NHL playoff series between both sides of the bracket, along with the Nashville Predators. Some intriguing things there. We'll, I guess, react to that next week with Chase and Joe, or tomorrow, that is, when Chase and Joe are back. and get into some celebrity birthdays and what day is it coming up next right here on 102.5 The Game. Final segment here on the Chase and Big Joe Show, 102.5 The Game. Now it's time for America's favorite game on planet Earth, and that is celebrity birthdays. I believe I'm joined by Connor Newt. Is that right?
I believe you are, yes.
Hello, Connor Newt. How are you, man?
I'm good. It sounds like you navigated pretty well today. That's good for you.
I know, not bad, right? At least I'm not getting rained on yet. I pause when I say that.
Don't come back here. It is pouring rain outside the station.
I've heard. Oh, man. No, it's been a fun show. Appreciate Chase and Big Joe allowing me to take the reins, and I promise I'll park the car in between the lines. That's all. I'll do it in
Don't
reverse.
scratch it.
I won't scratch it. I'll make sure the patina is nice and clean. There you go. But, yeah, no, to get to celebrity birthdays and what day is it, let's see here. First on the list is National Memo Day. I guess I didn't get the memo. American Red Cross Founders Day is today. Brown Bag It Thursday. Didn't know that was a thing.
Brown bag it, baby.
There you go.
I don't know what that means.
Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Hummus Day is today. So if you like your chickpeas, there you go.
There's seed oil in that, though. Just be careful.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you guys are going to get into that, Connor, but the whole seed oil conversation.
Oh, we're going to get into it for sure.
Wow. I'm fascinated. And somebody, I think it was, oh my goodness, somebody on the text line even mentioned it. Maybe you get to it later, but it was a whole entire paragraph's worth of they got rid of the seed oil out of their diet and they've dropped all this weight. So maybe there is something to the seed oil.
Maybe we got to do it.
Maybe. That's probably the next thing I'll do. Let's see. Next on the list, we have I Need a Patch for That Day. There you go. International Chardonnay Day, International Tea Day, National Aperitif Day, National Notebook Day, National Strawberries and Cream Day. Delicious. National Waiters and Waitresses Day. Shout out to our waiters and waitresses at Cracker Barrel. Rapture Party Day is today. Sister Maria Hummel Day. And last but definitely not least, World Day for Culture, Diversity, and Dialogue and Development Day.
You said Sister what day?
Sister Maria Hummel Day.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Not a clue what that is.
That's all I got. So as we will now get into celebrity birthdays, Connor is going up against Cruz. I have a handful of birthdays here. First on the list, we'll go to some sports here and there. Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills quarterback. How old is Josh Allen?
Josh Allen is 30 years old today.
Josh Allen is 31 years old today.
Connor on the nose.
I figured.
That is 30 years old. So, Connor Newt, congrats to that. You got 2 points. Next on the list, former Major League Baseball player, Josh Hamilton. How old is Josh Hamilton?
Bringer of – oh, no, that's Josh Donaldson. Never mind. Josh Hamilton is 43.
43.
Josh Hamilton is 45.
44. It's a push. That's what it says here. Yes, 44. It's a push. Next on the list, we have Miami Dolphins punter Brandon Fields. How old is Brandon Fields, Miami Dolphins punter?
27.
27.
41.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
So we were close.
I don't know if that's accurate of current player or not, but it says Miami Dolphins punter.
Punter's not a real position. It doesn't count.
Well, that's a Joe. Yeah, right. I know. Let's see. Next on the list, TV actor Mr. T. How old is Mr. T today?
Aha, Mr. T, main eventer of WrestleMania 1.
So you're going to know this. All right.
Mr. T is 75.
I'm going to go 73. I don't have anything to lose right here.
It's a push, 74. Man, I thought you were going to just Price is Right and just go one below or even one above. No, 74. All right, let's see. Did that one. Country music artist Cody Johnson. How old is Kojo today?
Oh, we love some Kojo. Kojo, I'll say, is 32.
I'm going to say 35.
39.
Wow.
Close, but no cigar.
He looks good.
I know, right? 39. It must be the beard. Let's see. Judge Reinhold, TV actor. He was in Santa Claus 1, 2, and I believe 3. He was Charlie's dad in Santa Claus 1. Neil.
Oh, yeah, Neil. What a loser that guy was. Neil is 65.
Oh, gosh. 70?
69. Cruz
Hey!
on the board. How
Guess
about
who's back?
that? He's back again, folks. Let's see. Andrew Miller, former Major League Baseball relief pitcher. How old is Andrew Miller?
Andrew Miller, let's see. 48.
I was going to say 50, so I'm going to go with it.
He is 40. So no dice on that one. PGA golfer Gary Woodland. How old is Gary Woodland today?
Where's Christian when I need him? Gary Woodland. That sounds like an old guy. I'll say 57.
No, there's no way. I'm gonna go 50 since it'll be closer.
42.
What
Man.
42-year-old's name is Gary?
Gary Woodland. He's iconic, man.
Gary.
Tom
start
Daly.
that now.
Tom Daly, Olympic diver. How old is Tom Daly?
Current Olympic diver or former?
according to his age, I would say current, but I could be wrong.
32.
I'm gonna go 28.
31.
Dang.
Connor Newt, 3-1. All right, let's see. Some others on this list. We have British road cyclist Mark Cavendish.
Oh yeah, Mark. I should know this.
Oh,
I
Cruz
should
is a big
I should
British
at least be in the
road cyclist fan.
ballpark. I should at least be in the ballpark. I watch the Tour de France religiously, which is unhealthy, but
Really? You a big
Oh, yeah.
biker back in your day?
no, never got into it. I used to wake up at 8 a.m. every day and watch it for 4 hours because I didn't have a life. So
We all have that, Cruz. It's all good. How old is Mark Cavendish?
I'm gonna say 31.
I'll go 38.
He is 41.
No
and
way.
that is the last one on the
Thought I
score
had
sheet
that one.
here. Connor Newt wins 3-1. Appreciate everybody playing. We will be back tomorrow at 2:45 for this game. We don't waste any time for it, as always. And yeah, Connor. So about the seed oil thing, real quick before we toss it off. You big fan of seed oil or no?
I didn't know what seed oil was until about 3 hours ago, but I've done some research since then. So
Okay.
me and D-Mace are going to probably have a little bit of a conversation about that now.
You cut it out of your diet yet?
I'm about to.
Well, I can't wait to hear for it. DVD is coming up next. As always, Joe always signs off with a mental health note. If you're struggling out there, go to therapy, call the station, contact Chase, Big Joe, myself, anybody. Just, we want you here. Life is better with you in it. If you need to call anybody, call 988 for that hotline number. And remember, God loves you. Always remember that. Folks, appreciate it. Thank you guys for allowing me to do this, Chase and Big Joe, and we will see y'all tomorrow right here on 102.5 The Game. DVD coming up next.